Hello everybody, Keith here again. Here's my end of the month in bloom for January 2021, and I hope you find it interesting. We've lost, of course, some of the ones that have been in flower for a while. My Frosty Dawn, my black hair dendrobium, that's finished, and one or two others are in possibly what you might call their last legs of flowering, but some are still going, like this one, this Spring Dream, of course. Not been the most fantastic of flowerings this year. I've had them all the way down the stem before. This time it's been more a case of picking up on the last few nubs. But here we are, it's in flower. I don't think it's got any more nubs showing, but down here at the bottom we've got a new growth. So that is continuing its very happy progress, and I'm very pleased with that for really, I was going to say bog basic, something really freely available. And I think it cost me £8 about 3 years ago when I first started really getting interested in orchids. And it's as reliable as they come. It's a tough little swine, and all the happier for it. There's one or two like that which I love, not because they're necessarily great orchids or uncommon or anything like that, just because they were tough enough to survive the abuses I inevitably gave them because I wasn't very experienced, and allowed me to gain confidence and get on to what is now a very broad spectrum of orchids, even if it's not the biggest collection in the world. Other news, I've got one or two coming into flower. I've got some Dendrobium nobile species that are coming into flower. There's another hybrid, Akazukin, is budding well. The Catatanti, which had a massive flower spike on earlier, and that's gone. That's putting another spike up on a different pseudobulb. So that's really nice. So, right, what have we got on the table? Okay, well, we've got a couple of Berryodas. Both came from the same plant. Didn't look after it very well to start with. Didn't do very well, it needed to be repotted. And since it's gone into bark, so that it can dry out properly between waterings, it's done much better. Hasn't needed a lot of looking after, either of them. I mean, once they got settled, once they started to go, it was fine. For a while it was trying to put out new growths and they would just rot. So I think it was just too close to the medium and too wet. But now we've got new growths, we've got lots of roots. There's a keiki, because this is always chucking keikis out. But we've got a number of nice spikes. I haven't got much of a sense of smell, but I can't smell anything. I know they're supposed to smell of honey. I can't actually smell anything. It may be there, it may be just faint. But that's another common orchid. But what a beautiful little plant. I must admit, you can look at some of the great big cattleyas or the big Phalaenopsis like Pink Twilight, which we'll see later on because that's still going. There's something very attractive about those, they're eye-catching. But these, the ones with the smaller flowers, take a little bit more looking at. I don't know, they seem something a bit more special to my taste. And let's face it, it wouldn't do for us all to be the same, would it, as the old saying goes. Another one that hasn't done very well for me this year. This is my white twinkle. It's only flowered on one bulb. The bulbs are not looking great. I don't really know what went wrong with it. Well, I do and I don't, if you know what I mean. It was in the Westland compost. Last year it did ever so well. This year, 2020 if you like, not so much. And it took me a while to sort of wonder what was happening and why it really wasn't going anywhere. By which time it seemed to have almost exhausted itself again. So I repotted it into bark, put it into a smaller pot, so again it dries out, and it's put up one not very brilliant spike that's got trapped and it's not extended properly, but at least it's doing it, and we've got new growth and we've got new roots. So that's another one that I can recommend to anybody that does have a nice scent if you get enough of the flowers out at once. Sort of a chocolatey vanilla kind of a smell. But they are quite a tough little orchid. But like all orchids, if you get it wrong, they're not, very long in letting you know that they're not happy. This is Ristreppia cyprea. It's been the most floriferous, if that's the word, I think it is, of my Ristreppias so far. As you can probably see, there's the remains of a previous flower, so it can flower several times from the same spot at the back of the leaf. The others haven't flowered as much. They are flowering now. Well, that one isn't out yet. I thought you might like to see the bud as it develops. Another Dendrobium tetragonum. This has done nothing but flower. And I am getting a little bit nervous about this plant because some of the older canes are beginning to look a bit wrinkled. They're not wrinkled in the same way some of the others do. The sides have kind of sunk in. It didn't put up a new growth last year, so I'm going to have to be a bit careful with this. I might even take it out of the pot and try and see what if anything is the problem. I just don't know. But although I'm obviously very pleased that it's flowering and keeping flowering like it's never flowered before, it's not really doing itself any good as far as I can see. So I'm a little bit nervous about this one. I wouldn't want to lose it, but I can't actually diagnose anything at the moment. But we haven't got any new roots, which is a worry. This one doesn't need any introduction. This is of course a Ligophyllum. Beautiful little miniature. It's grown extremely well for me. It's flowered tremendously well. I don't know how much longer it'll be flowering. I can't see any more buds in fact forming. There's a lot of old ones. So hopefully soon this will go into a vegetative phase, but that's grown and flowered remarkably well. I'm delighted with that. Apart from my spring dream, this is the first of my Nobly types to come into flower. Not very good this time, only one flower. But this is the smaller of my two Lady Coleman it's it's quite a pretty flower. Looks a lot like Nobile, although there's very little Nobile in it. But it's a very old hybrid. It's done well for me, this one. So I can forgive it a slightly poor flowering. It grows very well, typical dendrobium, Nobile type. You can't really give them, upset them too easily. One I don't think we're going to see anymore. This is Miltonidium Bartley Schwartz Highland. Very much going over. That spike's nearly done. The flowers are really going. You can see quite a few have already dropped. This spike, not so much, but this has been going quite some time now. And I could really do with it starting some new growths. Possibly needs repotting. It's all over to one side. Whether I've got it wrong, but there's lots of room at the back. So it may not need another pot, but it'll certainly need something doing with it to give it room to grow. But that's a great plant. You do see this in garden centres quite a bit. So it's one that's worth getting because the scent is very, very nice without being overpowering. A newcomer to the group this time. This is a no ID Cymbidium, which I bought a couple of years ago from Homebase as a rescue plant. I ended up with two the same, gave one to my sister-in-law because it's the only type of orchid she grows. Put two spikes up this year, but the spikes haven't been very strong. I've had to, this one partially collapsed. I managed to catch it in time so that it didn't starve the flower head too much. But I was advised by people in the East Midlands Orchid Society to tie it up at more frequent intervals than I would normally do for, say, an Oncidium or a Phalaenopsis, because they're woodier. This spike, can you say fleshier? It's not as rigid at all. So that's something possibly for other people to bear in mind if you're growing this kind of Cymbidium. It's doing okay, it's grown quite well. Some of the older leaves are looking extremely ratty now and starting to go. But it's, you know, I suspect it needs feeding better than I have been doing. But I've got to try and work out how to feed these when they're outside for the summer. It's all very well and good to go out, you know, when they're inside. You can go and pour fertilised water through them or whatever. When they're outside and it rains and they get thoroughly wet, they get flushed well, but do they actually get enough food? I'm going to have to look at that, particularly because the plant I bought at the same time, there's another rescue plant out of flower, has, excuse me, that grew enough, so at least I knew that it wasn't the same plant again. It's actually a darker one, a reddy magenta colour. But the spike grew, the buds almost got to the flowering point, and then it just aborted a lot. The buds fell off and the spike went in just a few days. So there's something not right with the way I'm growing these. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more learning. So okay, that's the first group, and I'll sort out and we'll come back in a bit. And let's start with one that is nearly over. Psychopsis Mariposa. They last a couple of weeks, take a little while to develop and then flower again. So it's on about a 6 weeks or so cycle. I think I tried to show this in my development video, but I think you can see it more clearly here, that you've got the flower there, and then behind it, this is the extension to the stem, this flower spike, that will take it up a little bit further for the next flower to grow, and so on. The new growths on it are progressing well. I'm pleased with the way that's doing, because having been repotted, and I know these things by reputation don't like being repotted, the fact that it's recovered quite quickly tells me I've got something right for a change. Might as well put these two up together. Whoops-a-daisy. My two no ID Phalaenopsis minis. Been going for ages now, these have. This one's nearly finished, but we've still got a few buds going. This one's put up another spike, but it's only got 2 or 3 buds on. So before long, these will both be going back into vegetative growth, and I'll look forward to seeing these for a good few years yet. I do like the spotted leaf paths. This is Maudii, very, very easy to grow. Only thing I have to do is what Lawrence Hobbs, who I bought it from, told me when I bought it, is keep its feet wet. So I just keep a small amount of water. I don't, when it's watered, I'll leave a little bit of water in the bottom, let it dry over the next week, and then give it a bit more. But it's been out a few weeks. The one of these two flower spike is going over. That one's still going. This one's just coming up to open. So that's obviously looking quite good. I wonder how well you're going to see this. This is Paphiopedilum dolonatii. This is the standard version. I bought a replacement for my Vinicolor from Lawrence Hobbs a few weeks back. That has got 2 new leaves coming, so that's obviously settled quite nicely. This I do like very much. Unfortunately, the way the light is in here, you can't actually see the delicacy of the petals and sepals. But if you look at the back, I hope you'll be able to see that a lot of the colours are actually in the back as well. It seems to flower, put a new growth up, flower, put a new growth up. Unlike some of my other paths which throw new growths around like nobody's business. That's doing its thing. And to round off the paths, this is one that I bought as American hybrid. Some people call them bulldog paths. A lot of the cognoscenti don't like them. Well, in some ways I can see why. It isn't the prettiest, it's quite a big flower. But having said that, it's another one like that Spring Dream, which is ideal for the non-specialist orchid grower. If you treat this thing like a common or garden Phalaenopsis, stick it on a windowsill, feed it regularly, you'll end up with a big plant. The size of it is the only real disadvantage. You can see how big the the plant is these leaves are a good 30 centimetres, so the plant's, you know, 60 centimetres, a couple of feet across, but it grows steadily, reliably. Must be due for repotting. I haven't repotted this in a very long time. It still keeps going. There's a gap in the middle because, of course, it grows only flowers on the fan once, so there is a gap. So whether I shall end up taking that out, I don't know. I'll have to see when it gets round to that. Big plants. Well, another one that is coming to the end of its flowering cycle again. Phalaenopsis pink twilight. You can see some of the flowers are beginning to go. There are no more buds to come on this spike, which is a ridiculous length, as it's flowered before. It's the only real disadvantage of this. It's a typical Phalaenopsis, grows very happily on a windowsill. It's a big chunky one, but it's such a lump. Absolutely beautiful. Not altogether my cup of tea, but certainly very striking, very beautiful. Would look well on an exhibition stand, I think. But nevertheless, if you come across pink twilight, just buy it. If you want a big orchid to show off with, because you can't go wrong with this one. Okay, nearly there, not many left now. I've had an absolutely disastrous year with my Dendrobium Phalaenopsis. Some of them have tried to flower and aborted. This one's managed to flower. We've got one or two aborted buds at the tip. Really don't know what that is. But this is the only one that looked great and has actually managed to flower. The others are not doing as well. The only thing I can think of is this is the only one in a medium which actually is guaranteed to dry out. It's extremely airy. It's a mix that initially I wasn't awfully keen on. I bought it from a fellow member of the East Midlands Orchid Society and used it, and I thought this is too much, but in fact it's the only one that's growing well. This is Polar Fire. Quite a pretty one, quite small, quite delicate, very pretty. Perhaps not as striking as Tile and Black, but there's nothing wrong with that, I'm sure. Another long-standing member of the Orchid show is this one. This is Mini Mark, of course. It doesn't know when to stop. It really doesn't know when to stop. It's just keeping going. We've got more buds on this main spike, and at least one, no, there's at least two more buds coming on this spike, or this branch rather. So this is going to be flowering for a little while yet. It isn't scented. I do love it. It's a beautiful looking thing. But I do get slightly worried that it's not put much by way of leaves up, but I do believe I can see something coming now, and we've got plenty of roots and they're looking nice and green. I do want to get it out of this pot and see what's happening. I put it in this because when I repotted it last time, it had a lot of roots that went down into this pot. I'm not convinced it was a good idea to put it in there. I can't see what's happening. I'd rather trim the roots perhaps and see what's there. But overall it seems okay. So that sums it up pretty much. I hope you've enjoyed seeing what's there. There'll be changes, I'm absolutely certain, next month, when I hope to see you again. Bye for now.